thank all of you for joining us here this afternoon for the first in what will be, we hope, a long series of lectures on extremely important topics that affect all of us in our daily lives here and affect all people around the world. I want to begin by acknowledging Kelly Smith, who you see entering the stage. Kelly is the founder of the Center for Living Peace and a wonderful partner for us here at the University of California, Irvine, and we're very, very pleased to be bringing this event to you here today with our distinguished panelists and then the active interaction of all of you here in the audience. The issues that we'll be talking about are the kinds of things that really affect all of us, as I mentioned, and they really help to show the way that all of us can help make this world a better place. We had a wonderful event here earlier this week that some of you may have participated in. It was the first University of California-wide Global Health Day. And this was an event that had faculty and staff and students from all 10 University of California campuses coming together to share research projects and to meet each other and build partnerships to work on issues of interest and importance all over the globe. And one of the things that's very important about this particular institute is that it's not UC Irvine and UC Riverside or UC Santa Barbara, but really the entire University of California, our 240,000 students and over 100,000 faculty and staff coming together and working in partnership to then move to other places around the world and do things that affect the lives of people there. We talk a lot about philanthropy and spend a lot of time working with the philanthropic world. And I think that the best philanthropy in many ways is that affects people around the world who are the most vulnerable, times when we really are reaching to those people who are most in need, those who really can't even hold a hand out to us, but we reach to them and do things to elevate the quality of their lives. And we're really pleased to be able to try to bring that consciousness here to you. When we think about the Center for Living Peace, one of the things that I like most about it is as you read through the values for the Center of Living Peace, they correspond very nicely with many of the values that we espouse here at the campus and things that we try to teach. As you know, there are 4 pillars of excellence that we focus on here at the University of California, Irvine. We focus on academic excellence, we focus on research excellence, but we also focus on leadership excellence and on character excellence. We think that it's important for us to develop the whole person so that those who come to us and spend their time with us develop themselves so they can go out and really make a difference in the world, really have an impact on those people who they interact with and those institutions they interact with around the world. And the partnership that we have with the Center for Living Peace is a way that we can do a lot, we think, to promote the character and leadership excellence that is so important to us. I want to also make sure that I acknowledge Kelly and her work for bringing our panelists, who she's going to introduce to us in just a moment, but for doing the work to bring our panelists really traveling from all over the world to come with us and be with us today and to get the series started. And we look forward to this iteration of the speaker series and then to a follow-up series or follow-up talks in January and then later on in May. And so I just want to say first, thank all of you for being here, to welcome you to our campus, and now to introduce the person who really made this all happen, Kelly Smith. Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you, Chancellor Drake. I can't take credit for making it all happen. There's been a ton of people involved, and everyone has really come together to really make this a special event. And I'd like to thank you all for being here. We're so honored to be a partner with UC Irvine for the Living Peace series, and we're so happy and excited and grateful for this first event here on the UC Irvine campus. So happy to see all of your students here too. And for those of you watching virtually, for those who couldn't make it today, we're also live online, in case you guys here didn't know that. We were tweeted out yesterday to about 2 million Twitter followers. And today our panel is also going to be asking questions that have come from tweets. So Twitter's been really involved in this whole event also. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Center for Living Peace, we're right across the bridge in University Center, and we're a place, and our mission is to provide that place for people to come together and to be able to find their own gifts and share them with the world. That's what this Living Peace series is all about. We provide classes there, but the Living Peace series also provides a way that everyone can get involved in service. And we hope that the speakers today will inspire all of you to not just listen to what's going on in the world, but actually want to get out and make good happen. So thank you all so much for being here. We're going to watch a little video on the screens so you can learn more about the speakers who are here today and the organizations that they represent.
South Africa is my home. It is also home to nearly 5.6 million people living with HIV or AIDS. The number of infected is larger than in any other single country in the world. As of today, approximately 2 million children have been orphaned by HIV or AIDS. In 2007, I launched my Africa Outreach Project with the Entertainment Industry Foundation. Our goal? To reach out to those most in need. In the past 3 years, we have helped reach 50,000 South Africans with life-saving health services.
Did you miss me? In all the time that I've come here, you're still here, and you're still asking to have the information given to you so that you can have better lives. And that's what Mpilonhle is all about. There are so many people who care about you. Isn't it a great feeling to know that you're not alone?
These shoes are coming from America, from a really nice man named Blake. His company is called Tom Shoes, and he heard about you guys, and he wanted to make sure that you all got shoes.
We take responsibility for our own lives, and we aim high, and we dream big. You all get to decide what you want to do to make something in your world better, because we don't give up. We never give up.
If you ever get a sex education from Gugu, you'll be set for life. You need to see her work a condom and tell kids to use a condom. It's the best thing I've ever seen.
Thank you.
Every child should have the right to know their status and how to protect themselves against HIV/AIDS.
HIV and AIDS, we can't be able to test at school. I had that fear. What if I get that I'm HIV positive? What I'm going to do? But after I've got the counseling, I saw that I can be able to live for a long period of time without any difficulties in my life, and I can be just healthy as a normal person. And I decided to test. I'm HIV negative.
The mobile health clinics visit 12 schools in the district on a regular basis.
We're about to walk into one of our mobile clinics over here that's working in this area today. We're going to see who's working inside.
What they do here, they deal with the social status of the learners and the community members. We screen them for every illnesses, any illnesses there is, and their social status at home.
The program is running smoothly. Health, most importantly, health education, which helps our learners to know how to live.
If they didn't have that information given to them living in this environment, they would be victims of their circumstances.
We went from school to school to see where we can build soccer fields with home field advantage. And Mia Hamm and Matt Damon are jumping on as ambassadors to do that. And so we went from school to school to look at places where we could build soccer fields. And this field, 3 years ago, this was just mud.
You didn't know much about soccer at first? So now look at you, you're a star.
When I come to these kind of schools, that's when I realize how incredible these kids are because they have so little.
I look at these students, they want to know. They want to have that power within themselves. This is our first unit.
This is the first unit.
This was the first one we came with. Yeah. So it makes me really happy to know that the work that the beautiful people and staff from Mpilonhle is doing is helping you so much.
HIV/AIDS is a reality that is happening in South Africa right now, but it is a reality that can change. And if I have learned one thing from all of this, it is that no matter where you are, no matter who you are, you can make a difference.
I hope that it's my great hope that today, listening to Charlize and the other people here on stage will inspire you. I was fortunate enough to travel with her to Africa to see it in person, and that was so inspiring. It's brought her here today so that we can share her work and Mpilonhle's work with all of you. I want to inspire you, and just let you know, earlier today at the center, we did have working groups come, and all of them are here now. They all set their intentions and set their goals to help this organization and to go out and really make a difference. And I'd like to invite you all to do the same by going onto our website, goodhappens.org. You can click there to get involved. So now, it's my real pleasure to introduce to you the three people who will bring you a lot more information about exactly what's going on and what the need is in Africa. Our first speaker is one of my favorite friends, and he's one of the most generous and inspired people that I know. Jerry Murdoch is the founder and managing director of Insight Venture Partners. He's also on the board of the Aspen Institute and the Santa Fe Institute. It's Mr. Jerry Murdoch. Secondly, the man who wins the award for coming the farthest, Dr. Michael Bennish, devotes his life to helping those who do reach out their hand in Africa. He is the founder and executive director of Mpilonhle, which has partnered with Charlize Theron's Africa Outreach Program in South Africa. He's been there for about 10 years and working to really make a difference for those who are affected by HIV/AIDS in that area. Dr. Michael Bennish. And last but not least is the lady who you probably all know as an Academy Award winner or most beautiful person on the planet or something like that. Or you may know her as the United Nations Messenger of Peace. She is from South Africa, and she never forgot her people there. She travels back, and one thing I was most touched by was all the people there call her sister. They know how much she cares. They know how hard she works to help make their life better. So please welcome Charlize Theron.
Wow. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to try and do something a little bit original here. We're going to try and have one conversation, include all of you, and as Kelly mentioned earlier, some people from cyberspace have tweeted in some questions, so we'll try and bring those questions into the dialogue. I'm going to kick things off here with a couple questions to our panelists, and then I'd like you to think in context of what questions you'd like to add and ask. And there's some people walking around with mics. A couple of them are the Dalai Lama scholars. And just raise your hand, be nice to them. It'll be good for your karma if you do. Okay, and so let me, without further ado, just kick it off with our panelists. And Charlize, so you happen to know this guy, Mike. How did you guys first meet?
Well, first, thank you. Can I just quickly say thank you so much for having us here, and thank you, Kelly, for those amazing introductions. I'll try not to disappoint. Yes, I'm from I was born and raised in South Africa. I left in '91, and 3 weeks after I turned 16. and then had this, incredibly fortunate life. And I always wanted to go back and do something. Obviously, HIV/AIDS, very prevalent. I grew up when the epidemic started, so it was something that I was very much aware of. And I think the thing that always frustrated me was knowing how many people died who shouldn't have died. And I'm not going to make it a long story, but being a South African and knowing all the lives that was lost to this disease, really, this virus really kind of frustrated me. So I wanted to do something that definitely worked in that arena. And I didn't really know how to go about it. I didn't know where to start, where to begin. And I was very fortunate to meet up with EIF, the Entertainment Industry Foundation, and they actually introduced me to Mike and told me about the work that he was doing in South Africa. And everything that he was doing made sense. I thought it was efficient, effective, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I started Africa Outreach in a way to kind of support and encourage the work of people like Dr. Mike Bennish. And that's how we met. In 2007, I went down. That was when we launched the project. And we started with 3 mobile clinics that we built. And the idea behind it was that it's too expensive to build infrastructure in rural communities. So we built these mobile clinics. And they function incredibly, not just on a medical level, but also on an educational level. And they travel through communities where there's pretty much no infrastructure. And we get the job done.
So, Mike, what's your recollection?
Well,
do you have beautiful
I'll
women
give you the
coming up?
details of that meeting that happened. But first, let me just echo Charlize's point. It's really a great privilege to be here, and I'm humbled by the opportunity to come with Charlize and Jerry to talk to you guys today and present our experience. And it's really very moving to come from Matuba and where the whole population is not as big as the number of people in this room to be able to talk and chat with you today.
Look, Mike, people.
But I remember where we actually met, not the origins of our meeting and the connection and who did the blind date and who made the arrangements. But Charlize, we were doing the opening, and Charlize was at Matuba was in a beautiful area, lots of the oldest game parks. Used to be the hunting lodges of the Zulu Kings. It was a very old lodge. And we went to one of the lodges where Charlize had just come into, and we were going that evening to brief her about what was going to happen the next day for the opening. And she was there, and we met to discuss the team. It was a rainy, sort of cold for a KwaZulu-Natal afternoon. And we came in, we sat around a lodge chair and table, and we started talking about things. And I remember Charlize told me, and I was sort of bedraggled, and she said, "You've really gone native," because in the cold weather I had a short sleeve shirt on, and I was looking very native. And then as we were talking, this guy left the table he was at, and this must happen to Charlize all the time. And he turns to me, because I was doing a lot of talking on the briefing, and he says to me, "How long are you going to be sitting there?" Obviously he thought, I don't know what he thought, that he wanted this chance to cuddle up and sit next to Charlize. I just don't know. So I ignored him for a while, and he was very persistent. And you could sort of see out of the corner of your eye his wife was getting more embarrassed and more embarrassed and more embarrassed. He said, "You're going to be there, come on, someone else should have a chance to sit there." And then he says to me, he said, "You must be the tour guide," he says to me. And I said, "Well, how do I respond to this?" I said, "Is this the movies where I get up and punch the guy out and say, enough of this?" And I said, "Well, I'm not quite that age, can't quite do it." I said, I'll use a Groucho Marx line. I turned to him and I said, "You know what? No fooling you, you're just too bright for me," I said to him. And he sort of withered away after that and left us alone. But then I know that was our first meeting. And then after that, we've been doing this project together, as Charlize said. And
So what got you interested in going to Africa in the first place?
Well, I've always been involved in international health, and I think I've worked in Bangladesh for many years. I worked in Bangladesh. I went for 1 year and I stayed 7, and I went to Africa for 2 years and I've stayed 10. And I think, we've got one life on earth that we lead, and you have to do it in a way that's rewarding to you and I think meaningful. And how we find meaning in life and how we find reward is different from every individual. And this was an opportunity with support from CTAOP and others to carry out something that we think in its own small way is important.
Yeah.
And I've just stayed, so I went there, and international health is my thing. I mean, I remember when I was To be honest, I was doing my my infectious disease training at the University of Chicago. And, it was rewarding, but this is rewarding on a different level. We were seeing lots of kids with oncology problems, infections and chemo problems, and I talked to my faculty, and I got guidance from my faculty. I said, Mike, why don't you try this project in Bangladesh? It's done great work, people have gone to, and I've never looked back after that.
Wow. Wow.
Even when the travel agent gave me a ticket to Dakar instead of Dhaka, and I had to change that around.
There we go. So, Charlize, what kind of inspired you to do the Africa Outreach Program? I mean, that's an amazing thing that you're doing, and what was the inspiration?
A little bit like I said before, I don't think when you come from a country like South Africa, I think it's very hard to people love to, and it's totally understandable, that I left South Africa, I speak an American accent now, I've totally lost my roots. Maar ek praat nog Afrikaans, soos dat enige Suid-Afrikaners hier is, wat 'n bietjie Afrikaans wil praat, kom ons praat. My point is, a lot of people kind of through this, I get it a lot in the press in South Africa and here that, I kind of forgot where I came from. And that was never the case. I always went back to South Africa, and it's, as a South African, the problems that we face today and in the last decade are very similar problems that we faced when I was growing up in South Africa. So it wasn't that it was like a new South Africa. It was the same South Africa that I had grown up. The only difference was that, Nelson Mandela was freed and we were living in a democracy. And but violence was more prevalent, and HIV was still killing people, and we had a government that wasn't supporting the poverty levels and the people that were in real need. So, the hardest thing for me, Jerry, was to come up with something that I felt was effective, because here's the thing, there's so many people out there who do incredible work in Africa. And I was raised by a mother who used to always say, no great change comes from one person. And this idea that you can kind of just walk in and think that you're going to change things overnight just doesn't happen. So I knew that instead of starting something from scratch and, doing this just as a something that I can put my name on and say, this is me, I wanted to work with people who were doing great work. And that was, I think, how Africa Outreach really started. Instead of starting an organization from scratch and going there and doing, here are incredible people like Dr. Mike Bennish, who's dedicating his career and his life. He's living in Africa. He's doing incredible work. And how about supporting somebody like that? And, I think I wanted to just surround myself with like-minded people who understood Africa the way I understand Africa as a South African. And no, I'm not trying to be negative towards international people coming in, but there is something that gives you kind of a hands up, kind of makes you understand the way people want to be helped. Africans are incredibly proud people. They don't want handouts, and as an African, I knew that, and we wanted to go in there and give them something that was sustainable, that was theirs, that we could say, this is yours, take pride in this. And, our goal is to go and do something that will inevitably be theirs and that they can take pride in and that they can run. We don't want to stay there for forever and ever. I think the goal is to give them something that they can, at the end, call their own. So that was the inspiration, purely just being a South African and wanting to come up with something that I felt was really effective and efficient and run well by somebody like Dr. Mike Bennish. I mean, we work with other programs in Africa. This is really my baby. This is what we started with Mpilonhle. But we travel, being a UN messenger of peace, I get to travel a lot through the rest of Africa. And so we get involved in a lot of programs like Mpilonhle that we really feel do good work. We're involved with Eve Ensler's project, V-Day in DRC, and when I went there with the UN, it was really, this is in Africa, we deal with this a lot too, but in the DRC, to try and make something change as far as rape in that country is impossible. And the government, there's no way that you're ever going to get in with a government that's going to actually make real changes that will actually change things for women and children in that country. And so you have this massive need of, we went to the Pansy Hospital and you see all these women who need fistula operations, and it's ridiculous. And what Eve is doing, I think, is really important because she's building a community for these people to go to. So in short, it's just really finding people who are doing things that I really think are making just great change, you know, whether it's immediate. I feel like what I do with Mike is not so much immediate. I think it's really important because it's prevention. It's really looking at the youth of South Africa and saying, we're tapping into a generation of kids. We're getting them at this cusp where, you know, they're gonna start having sex. Do they know how to use a condom? Do they know what they need to know about HIV/AIDS? And you grab them at that moment right before they're gonna make either the greatest mistake in their life or not, and we tell them, we give them a sex education class, we give them all these tools to kind of make this decision, which in the long run is going to save their lives.
I think isn't about 50% chance in South Africa someone's going to
In this
contract
area.
HIV.
In this
In
area,
this
life-
area.
lifetime risk.
50% chance.
Lifetime.
So let me just stop here for a quick second. I want to come to the audience for a couple questions here in just a minute. But I want to point out something, that these two people here are examples of global citizens. And what you're going to learn here, part of this is what does it mean to be a global citizen? For me, I tried to look it up in Wikipedia, and Wikipedia says, hey, global citizenship can be defined as an ethical disposition which can guide an individual as to either their responsibility in the various communities to which they belong. And I think that there was another comment about global citizenship hundreds of years ago by revolutionary Thomas Paine, who said, my country is the world, and my religion is to do good.
Oof, wow.
So that's why he's revolutionary. So with that,
What are we doing here?
so let me just, at that minute, let's see if we can get a question or two from the audience, and then I'm going to bring in some questions from the Twitterverse, and let's see who first wants to be brave enough to ask a question. Anybody here? We have a microphone.
If you get a microphone, I'll start.
There's a
Please.
lady there too,
Okay,
yeah.
what we're going to do is we're going to bring the microphone here, and
Oh, there.
we have a young lady back there, so she's going to ask the question first. Sorry, Chancellor. We'll get back to you. But what I want to do is repeat the question, try and be brief, and then I'm going to repeat it back so everyone gets it clearly.
Okay. What's your most poignant memory from where your experiences in Africa? Your most memorable?
For me?
Both of you.
Wow. Well, go ahead,
I-
go first.
Just in Africa in general, or since
what-
this project?
What you've been involved in, yeah.
Okay, so when we went to launch, and Mike was just telling that story of us meeting, it was all very overwhelming because, okay, I'll just say it bluntly. My partner who started this whole program with me is here in Shield. She's like smiling there because she remembers this very vividly. The night before the launch, I had a mental breakdown pretty much because the need is so great that you get overwhelmed. And you almost, once you're in it, and this is why I have so much respect for Dr. Michael Bennish, because it is so easy to just throw in the towel and to just say, what is this really gonna do? And I think the night before we launched, that's how I felt. I felt like we were such a small drop in this giant pond, which is the greatest metaphor, and that's the lesson out of all of this, that is the greatest thing you can be, and that is how change, that's why I want to be here today to do this, because that is how change happens. But in the moment, I felt so overwhelmed that I just looked at Ashley, my partner, and I said, why are we even doing this? Like, why does this even matter? We launched the project. It was really, really tough. It was a lot of work. A lot of great people who had to like step up to the plate and make this project start. And 18 months later, I went back and I remember walking into a sex educational class that was taking place. And just quickly, I was in one of the classes before I left when we launched, and nobody said anything. None of the kids wanted to talk. You know, this is not just in this community, but by South African standards, it's very much taboo to talk about these things, to talk about HIV/AIDS, to talk about sex. There's no such thing as sex ed in South African schools. So all of a sudden, we're throwing a bunch of students in the back of a mobile clinic, and we're throwing this really great African mama in there, you know, and we're saying, talk sex with them, and they're just like, nothing.
they don't, you know, like the dildo comes out and they're just like cringing. And this poor African woman is like encouraging them, and they're just like, get me out of here. Like, what is this about? And I'm just sitting there going, this is the worst thing ever. Cut to 18 months later, I go back and I'm sitting in the same mobile clinic, and the same lady is giving the same sex ed class. And you have 14, 15, 16-year-old kids fighting over each other to talk, to ask questions. The dildo comes out, and like the 16-year-old boy in the first row is like, I want to put the condom on, I want to put the condom on. You know, and the girl's like, that's not how you, and you shouldn't do, and I'm just like, oh my God, and that's in 18 months. That changed, and that was so profound, because there was maybe 25, 30 students in this class, and I thought to myself, if anything, if I just looked at it, and it gets me really emotional, because when I looked at that in that small classroom, I knew that those 30 kids had the power within themselves to save their lives, and that was unbelievable to me. Sorry, go.
Yeah. Let me jump to a couple questions from the Twitterverse out there. Charlize, just on that point, what are you most proud of in what you've done with the African Outreach Program?
That, you know, it would be that. It really would, you know, I think I don't, I try not to get stuck in how I try not to think of the giant big picture. I try to think of things a little bit more immediate, which really helps me. Because I think the greatest lesson I've learned during all of this is that you forget that the kids that you reach out, or the communities that you reach out, they become teachers. And they become the ones that take the knowledge and they go into their villages and into their communities and into their homes, and they spread this knowledge. And you forget, you know, we have, how many volunteers do we have, Mike?
100?
Yeah,
120?
incredible people who come, and they're the most incredible teachers and inspiring humans to be around. But what I never really kind of truly, I think, grasped was once they were done giving the information to the 13, 14, 15-year-old kids that children that we deal with, all of a sudden we had those kids, they were volunteers. They were the ones spreading the information. And I think that was incredibly powerful. And I guess I'm really proud of the fact that when I was growing up in South Africa, this is not just a thing of privilege, but even in white communities, these were things that you just never talked about. And there was no place to talk about them. There was no environment or kind of a circle in school where you could talk about these things. And so what was taboo for so many years in a country where people were dying because they weren't talking about it is changing now. And I think, you know, immediate care of medicine is always important, but in the long run, the thing that's really going to grab this virus and destroy it is knowledge. You know, it's future knowledge, and we have to think in the long, what's going to happen in the next 50 years. And I really believe that this kind of knowledge that you give to children, this is what's going to change a country like South Africa and the world in 50 years.
That's awesome. Mike, what are you most proud about in your accomplishments?
I think there's two things, poignancy and proud. I mean, I think proud, I have to say, is of the staff that we have working for us, who work under very challenging conditions. And I think the same thing is true a little bit here in the States with teachers, and a lot of maybe inappropriately guilt is put on them and achievements. But this staff that we have, that Charlize talked about, you know, go out and work in conditions where the temperature can be 100+ degrees, where water might not be present at the school, where the toilets are terrible.
Or no toilets.
And no toilets at all. And they work with amazing dedication, day in and day out, to really work with a group of kids, and they come from this area, and they've been lucky enough to get a higher education, and many of them, but our counselors are graduates of these schools who've had special training, and they do the testing for HIV, and 85% of the kids in school have accepted HIV testing and know their status and get on the antiretroviral. So I think proud in the sense that you see what can be done despite the challenges if there is commitment and a sense of common purpose. And that is very, very moving, I think, to see that staff. And that doesn't come, I think it's the same here, and again, I'm not obviously expert to talk about it, but I think it's the same thing that Martin Luther King talked about. Civil rights was half the story, and then how do you get empowerment and economic opportunity and education? How do you go that next step? And the same was true in South Africa. I mean, the freedom struggle obviously was an essential component of what happens, but this is the next component. And as Charlie said, it's not affecting 40 million kids, it's affecting 25,000. There's 40 million people in South Africa, probably 5 million of adolescent age, but it can serve as a model. But that's something to be very proud of, to see that.
Right. And what are the challenges that you faced?
Well, I think the challenges are considerable. I think they're on a number of different levels. And I think, the analogy that I use, if natural resources were the determinant of wealth, the Congo would be Japan, and Japan would be the Congo, right?
Right.
It's so crazy to think about it that way, right? But it's so true.
So organizational capacity. Why are countries underdeveloped? Why are world? And South Africa especially, and Charlize knows better than I, is two countries. It's two worlds. And United States, Brazil, and South Africa are the countries with the greatest economic disparity. And the rural schools we work in, those kids that we work with can see the main highway in the distance from their hills, Mercedes and BMWs driving between Joburg and the Durban or the game lodges where we are. How do those kids really see their future, and how do they grasp their future that can take them in a way while still maintaining important traditions? 'Cause this is a very traditional area we work with. So that challenge of working in that immense economic disparity where schools have very little is a big challenge, and the chaos and the lack of management that go with it. I do think there are political challenges. I do think when the previous administration was in power, there was this, and I'm trying to think of a diplomatic word to say, but I think they did much good, but they obviously missed the boat on HIV, as Charlize mentioned.
Right.
And there was great, especially in a traditional society, it's difficult for people in bureaucracy here to buck what's being said on top. But it was difficult, as much as people wanted to cooperate, it was very difficult for them to cooperate. So dealing with the government was very difficult in that circumstance. The new administration under Jay-Z, as they call him, the rock star, lots of problems, lots of issues, but cooperation on a much different level than we had it before. And that's a reality. It doesn't mean he's a perfect person, but it does mean that on the cooperative level, on that level, we get very good cooperation with the government.
Right.
So I think, let me say this, Jerry, you wouldn't be in this business if you look at the challenges rather than the opportunities, right? Because if you wanted to really know about the challenges, how long do we have? But I'll also tell you about the opportunities
Well,
that we
that's
have
great.
as well.
That's a classic social entrepreneur. It's also, if you happen to ski, they always say, and you're skiing in trees, look for the opportunities, not for the obstacles, because you'll hit it right into it. But you guys also are great examples, not only global citizens, but of social entrepreneurs. These are people that are actually building enterprises, putting effort together, and doing things quite unusual without necessarily having sort of a whole lot of support from governments or other agencies. You've gone out on your own and done this, right? Is that part of the challenge that you guys have faced?
I think that if you're going to sit around and wait for a government to kind of guide you or help you, you're going to be sitting around for a really, really long time, especially in Africa. But I think about that, it's in the whole world. I think it's always something that you have to be incredibly open to. It's a dialogue that you have to always kind of try and have, and we really try to nurture that dialogue. We want the government to be involved. We want them to help. We want them to say, I've tried for a long time to say, let's throw this as a curriculum. Like, let's put sex ed. What version of what we're doing, if you had that in every school in South Africa, my God, the amount of lives that you're going to save.
Right.
But it's hard in Africa. It's hard in the rest of the world. Like I said, like in the DRC, there's absolutely nothing that you can do with the government.
DRC
there.
is Congo, right?
Yes.
Democratic Republic of Congo.
But Jerry, let me just give you an example of an opportunity. The ability to talk forthrightly about issues of sex and safe sex, right? If I look at the United States, it's such a highly politicized environment that, you know, if you put a curriculum in place, someone's going to object to it, right? And, you know, we read, when you're sitting there, we have the web, we can look at the latest New York Times or LA Times and see, you know, what happened when the sex education program was, and I know Chancellor was saying that his wife works for Engender Health, which is trying to move a lot of these issues in there. We can do things in rural South Africa that don't necessarily, whether they're under the radar or talk, as Charlize does, quite openly about these issues that don't get organized political opposition. You have to watch every step. So that's an opportunity to talk forthrightly about sex that we haven't had. And you know, the communities have been open with that. And you look at ways to do it. People are touchy about, you know, should we address HIV? And there's always one silverback and says, you know, it's not Zulu tradition to talk this way. And then you can see the women in the audience all rolling their eyes. And
But you
saying,
know what's amazing about that, because you bring up a great point, we, you know, like Mike just said, we deal in an area that's predominantly Zulu, very, very, very traditional. And you just, you know, you don't want to step, first of all, we don't do anything in any community until we get the blessing of the Unduna, which is like the leader of the community. And what is amazing to me is that they're an older generation. They are the generation that really struggles with all of this stuff, talking about sex and condoms and all of that stuff. Like, it's harder for them. But what is unbelievable is that once they realize the power that it has in saving their children and their community, how they get so behind it instantly, right? I mean, it is really impressive to me. Because I know that generation of South Africans, they are not comfortable with showing a dildo and a condom, trust me. But it's incredible to have them behind it. And just to finish what I was saying earlier, I think the best work that's being done are done by people and organizations and NGOs on the ground that don't have government involvement. And I think those are the people that Africa Outreach wants to support. Those are the people who say, you know what, this is the need. It's so evident what needs to be done. Here's how we do it. And those are the people that Africa Outreach wants to help through funding.
So I think that, Jay, if I can just, you know, it gets back to the point of entrepreneurship, that we have an ability to take initiative that's not easy to do in government.
Right.
In the end, we have to also see that work with government to see that lessons that we learn and things that we find successful are adopted in the government programs.
Right.
So.
In addition to sort of, you know, what you've done in this particular field, you've also done things, African Outreach, with other organizations. Like you work with Oprah and people like this. Can you tell me a little about some of the organizations that you guys have worked with and some of the other problems you've solved? I mean, something like with the soccer fields you've done and things like that.
Look, I mean, the great thing about, that I think Kelly Smith is doing here, and this is kind of our philosophy too, is that we have to start thinking in innovative ways. We can't just, you know, stick with the old school and stick with the safe. And we have to start thinking differently and taking the risks. And I think those people who are willing to do that are the ones that come up with really, you know, if you look at the amount of money that America spends towards Africa to philanthropy and what gets done with it, it's shocking. And the reason why is because nobody is willing to kind of rethink what you can do with $1 in Africa. And so I have such respect for people who can come up with innovative ways. And also just in how to help, not just the business and the financial side of it, but how to help. We work with a group called Home from Home. You know, over 2 million children are orphaned in South Africa from HIV/AIDS. So imagine the amount of orphanages that we have in South Africa. Children who are coming out of an environment that they don't necessarily have the tools of therapy or social care to kind of adjust to life outside of an orphanage. What I liked about this organization, Home from Home, they build homes. Also, these kids get taken out of their communities, and it's a very cultural thing. You know, South Africa's got 27 different cultures. So what they do is they build homes within the community that the orphans come from. They only put 6 to 8 children in a home. They give then jobs to women who would have never had independence or income to be the mothers of the house of the 6 to 8 children. So the orphans grow up in an environment that's a home. they grow up within their community, and they grow up not feeling that they're any different from the other children. They can go and play on the streets with children who have families. So that's an organization that we, through Africa Outreach, try to help, because I just think that it's so innovative, and it makes so much sense when you think about just building giant orphanages that kids are going to come out of just being damaged.
Yeah.
We work with V-Day, like I said, with Eve Ansler in the DRC, in the Congo, just because what's happening there is, my God, it's really, it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. I have a really hard time calling it rape. It's not rape. It's like a devastation of female, a female generation over there. It's a war that has been going on for, God, over 15 years, and
or 50 years, really, off and on.
well, yeah, the last 15 years have been, but what is it? 5-6 million people have died, and nothing has been done. Absolutely nothing. And what's really devastating is how Africans are taking advantage of Africans in that country, and how, African men are raping women. To the point where it's not rape. It's a devastation of, it's horrible. And when I got there, that was, again, when I was saying to this lady, it's so easy to just get so overwhelmed by all of it, and to just go, how can you ever change anything here? And when I met up with Eve, and she came up, she's such a great character, and she started talking about the city of hope that she wanted to build close to the Pansy Hospital, where women go and get their fistulas fixed. Not once, not twice, sometimes up to 8 times. I sat next to a woman who was 80 years old and a little girl who was 8, and they both came in at the same time, having basically their entire insides hanging outside of them. The 80-year-old woman had come in 3 times. So she had been raped. The doctor who runs the place, a great guy, kept saying that the thing that kills you is that when you let these women go from the hospital, they're just going to come back with the same thing 3 months later. They're going to get kidnapped by rebels. They're going to be held hostage, and they're going to just be taken advantage of, and they'll come back with plastic burned inside of them. It's really just horrendous. So what she's doing is building an environment, a city, a place where these women can go and be independent and financially independent, give them the tools and the access to kind of start their own community, so that they just don't go back into the same thing. Now, you could never get a government to do that. It took somebody like her to say, I'm going to write vagina monologues, I'm going to get this message out there, I'm going to let people understand what's happening, and I'm going to, whomever wants to help, fund this city, and it's going to be life-saving.
That's great. Let me take a few questions from the audience, about what it means to we're talking about, the idea of global citizenship, social entrepreneurship. What does it mean to think outside yourself and try and get involved and help? And we have a gentleman right here. If we could get a microphone to him, that would be great. And a lady to the right, second. Okay?
Why is my chair so noisy?
Yeah.
You guys...
First of all, I just want to say thank you for coming here today. You've been a huge inspiration for not only us that we're at the workshop today, but for everybody here. So thank you so much for coming. I know there's a lot of community people here today. There's a lot of students here. And I know you're doing so much on the ground there. And it's so difficult for us to be able to make a difference with the communities there, because what are we going to buy a ticket? How can we help them as students? But knowing kind of who we are and what we can do as students, how can you see us making a difference to help you? There's fundraising we can do, raising awareness. We talked about these issues in our workshops today, but how do you feel like we can fit into helping you to, accomplish providing education, having these clinics and whatnot? And also, too, what's your vision for your clinics and your outreach project? What's your vision for what you want to create in South Africa?
Wow, first of all, thank you so much. Like, stop thanking us. It's incredible that you're all here, and the workshop when I walked, just everything that you guys want to do and the willingness. And I'm always so unbelievably moved because I sometimes feel like, oh yeah, Africa makes sense for me. I'm an African. Like, why would anybody give a shit? You know what I mean? Like, makes sense that I would, but that you guys care. You guys care about us. I think that for me, you know, it's always hard. I think people always ask, what can I do? And I'm going to tell you right now, money is so important. I'm not going to lie about it. You can come up with all of these ideas, but to run a program like Mpilonhle on the ground with the amount of volunteers that we need, it boils down to finances. I mean, we have something that's really good. So I won't lie about that. I won't be like, oh, no, financially, we always are in need. But what I always tell people is that if that is not something that you can do, and also just to always remember, when you think about money in Africa and money in America, it's two very different things. And most of these, you know, I think something like 12%, 13, 15% of South Africans live off $1.25 a day, or what is it? No.
$2 a day, $1.50?
Yeah, it's like nothing. So just always keep that in mind too. The other thing that I always say is there is nothing like what I talked about knowledge. You know, there's nothing like spreading the word. That's really it. And people always say, I think people have a hard time kind of making the connection of why they would care about Africa. And the thing I just always say, the thing that I kind of really truly believe in every part of my bones, are that you should care, because Africa, you know, the leadership that we have in Africa right now is very, very poor and has been for a very long time. And there will only be new leadership with a fresh way of thinking, you know, leadership that might actually think about things like health and poverty and HIV/AIDS. But that's only going to happen because they're going to come from these kind of programs, right? I see these kids and I go, this is the next leadership that will run Africa. And why should we as Americans care about that? Because African politics, it affects world politics on such a level that it's important for us as world citizens. So I think everything that you guys are doing here is incredible, and that's the way to go about it. And that, like I said, to always kind of come up with new ways to kind of think differently and to take the chance and the risk and to come up with something that might not be something that's been done before. But all of this will make a difference.
That's great. Is there a second question, please?
Hi. I'm also from South Africa. So, and I think what you're doing is great. But I wanted to know how you plan. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I think what you're doing is great. But how do you plan on, expanding your projects and, from just that area to all over the country and to all the different provinces?
It's money. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say it was something else. And, when I started this, I was such a innocent virgin, and again, this is very South African, you'll relate to, you don't talk about money, right? So I was like, oh God, and then I started working and talking and hanging out in this community of philanthropists, people who have really done it, wanting to learn, tell me, what is it? And then meeting all these amazing people who've become mentors to me now, how do you go about this? And I was really shocked at how bluntly the conversation always turns to, how you fundraise, how do you get the dollar to run something? This is a project that can be shut down tomorrow or in 3 months if we don't keep the work up, if we don't keep the financing going. That's just the harsh reality. And so now I've just kind of learned that is just a part of what we do that you can't hide from. So, it's incredible to, you get the word out, and when I heard the amount of tweets that went out about this, I was like, oh my God, we've never had that. So I think there's a great power in that. That's how you start a revolution. That's how you let people know. And what I really believe is that people do want to help, but they just don't know how. So maybe now through all of this and social media and us being here and telling you guys a little bit about what we do, if somebody, I've had
I had a 9-year-old, a 3rd grader, who, heard about Africa Outreach and said that she wanted to help. And her goal was to, in a year, get something like $1,500 together. And she's every day, she's like, I'm at 574 today. She's 9 years old. I'm like, you rock, you're amazing. I had a guy who was like 55, he has poker games once a week at his house. He sends us 50% of the proceeds of the poker game. I mean, isn't that amazing? So, it's amazing what could happen from this, from us just talking about this and social networking and people talking about it. And, I always say you can never hit somebody over the head and try and make them do something. All we can try and do is share some of our experiences. And if that's something that emotionally you tap into, that's how it's going to happen. Trust me. That's when I went to launch in 2007, I was like, I'm going to do this. This will be all over Africa. The night before, I was like, oh, dear God, we have 3 mobile clinics. What are we doing? You know what I mean? So the will is there from us to want to do it. And I don't think that's going to ever go away.
That's great. I think a lot of the students here may be thinking, what experience do they have or what can they bring to help? And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, given your day job, you played the daughter of a safe-cracking thief, you played the girlfriend of an assassin, you played a prostitute, serial murderer.
Wait.
What in that experience has helped you, launch this amazing, outreach program? And what is it that these people need in terms of experience?
It's actually, I think my work as an actor has been incredibly helpful because I think when I look at the work that I've been so fortunate to be able to do and have had such blessings in my career, but the connection really is that, as an actor, it's, observing. And it's, you have to kind of come from a place of empathy to understand the human condition and human behavior. And I think as a woman in this industry, I've been incredibly lucky to play conflicted women. And it's given me a chance to really kind of understand people better. And I think that's been, and I think that also comes with age. I think you get older and you become, I will always be an optimist, but there's always this other thing on the other side of the scale that balances it, and that's realist, And I think when you do this work, you have to kind of keep that balance going. You can't float in the sky and kind of, just dream. You got to dream and then also kind of figure out how you're going to get your feet dirty and actually get it done,
So you just jumped in, basically.
Yeah, but again, you jump in with people like Mike, and it's like I cannot tell you guys, I go there as much as I can, and I'm and I like it. I'm there, and I'm not ashamed to say I get down and dirty, and I'm there, and I want to be a part of the sex ed classes, and we travel, and it's tedious and all of this stuff, but then I get on a plane and I come back home, and Mike stays there, and those volunteers stay there, and they are in it 24/7. When we started the project, we were just visiting schools 5 days a week. And all of a sudden, the students would go back into their communities, and they would talk about this, and we started getting the community asking, can we have some of this? We want some of this. And Mike took it upon himself to then make it a 7-day project, where on the weekends, they would go into communities and talk to parents. And I just have such admiration for that. I just, to be in that every day, you can so easily just throw in the towel. You really could. Life is incredibly hard in this country, South Africa, and this is the guy who's there every day doing it. So
let's talk about that, Mike. What about your experience?
Damn, exactly.
That's very generous of Charlize.
No, it's true.
Extremely generous, and
you can never leave. You know that now, right?
I think, what I would say is we each contribute in our own way. And I think what we do is on a day-to-day basis is prosaic, right? I mean, we can it's poetry when we talk about it and think about it, but when we do it, it's prosaic. And it's certainly not heroic. It is a day-to-day thing that you just have to make happen, and you do it on a daily basis. And I just think it's something that gives you satisfaction on any number of levels, and you have to decide why it, what is in it for you and what satisfaction you gain out of life. But I think,
and it kicks your ass at the same time.
Right. But it's just very satisfying, and it's satisfying for the family, and and it doesn't mean that what we do in our day-to-day life, whatever job we have, can't be rewarding and satisfying. But to the students, I would say, as a student, in terms of getting involved, your job as a student in a way is to learn and to grow. And you shouldn't feel as a student that you shouldn't have the illusion that your job is necessarily to contribute at your stage in life. And especially coming here from America, we need, I think, still, despite all the problems we have and society gets, we still have a disproportionate influence in the world, for good and for bad. And hopefully we would use our influence as much as possible for good. And to be good globally takes an informed and committed citizenry. And students need to get involved globally on any level, here and we all do, and whatever. And it doesn't mean that we're all going to go and spend our lives in Bangladesh and Africa. That wouldn't be appropriate. We wouldn't be able to get an audience here if we were all in Bangladesh and Africa. But it does mean we should get out and travel, be as aware as we can, participate in projects, which we're happy to get students involved in. But don't be naive as to think, and I keep telling this myself, that we have necessarily the answers, right? We need to listen to communities. Communities have lots of strength. We can add some leavening to the stew. We certainly have a commitment to provide resources. As the country that's still by far the wealthiest in this world, we're far off the target that all countries agreed upon, the 7% of GDP. We're at 1% of GDP in terms of what we commit, and if you take our military aid out of that, that's half of that in terms of aid. So we have a commitment to be involved. We'll be a better country because of it. We'll be a better citizenry because of it. It's going to help us not only in the sense that we give, but even in our economic enterprise globally. If we don't understand other societies and if we don't participate, we're going to lose as a nation. So to the students, I would say, don't have illusions about being the great benefactor that goes out there. Students are a time in life when you should be selfish, when you should get things, and part of that is going out to projects like ours and seeing how things work and looking and working with the community and learning about that.
Be searchers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and that's how I got my start.
Let me add one more thing. The time it's a unique time in the world. Most of you students, I'm sure, are all on Facebook or on Twitter or both. This is a time when the world is being connected in massive ways. You can use your own networks to raise money, share ideas, build teams, and go after what you want. And so right now is your time. There are 6.8 billion people or so in the world. About 4 billion people have cell phones, and they have access to each other. Soon we're going to be at the time when the far majority of most human beings on the planet will be connected to each other. We just need to have the society and the global citizenship to take advantage of that, to be able to really, really bring us together in a place where we can make a difference in the world. And now we have time for one or maybe two more questions. Okay. We've got two right next to each other. I hope the same question or? Okay. Okay, we'll get the microphones to you. The Dalai Lama scholars will run down and get you the microphone. So why don't we start with, okay, there we go. You guys negotiate yourself.
I guess my main question is, the communities that you're working in, what do you see in terms of long-term how your role there is? Do you see that these communities will eventually take on health themselves? Do you see you spreading out to other communities? I mean, I guess the main point is what is the long-term effect you see within these communities?
It was always important for me to do something that would be sustainable and also something that you could leave behind. Like I said earlier, I understand I understand immediate need. There's a massive immediate need to the generation above what we're dealing with
who are infected and need antiviral drugs. But I also understand the power in not just taking care of the immediate, but to kind of leave something behind that they can grow, that they can own, that they can call their own. And I think that comes from the knowledge that we're leaving behind. So for me, definitely, and that's something that I've always said to Mike, that the idea that you're just always going to be there, it can't be that. Otherwise, then it's a failure as far as I'm concerned. If in 50 years we're still there, then the idea of what we're trying to do, which is here is the tool, here's the knowledge, now move forth. I mean, that's what our logo is all about. I mean, that's what we believe. So for me, that's important, definitely. So I would like to spread out more. I would like for it to be a bigger program. But I don't want it to be there forever and ever. I would hope for a future in Africa where Africans finally have ownership of their own country, where Africans actually stand up and protect what's theirs. That's what I'm hoping for, not just to survive HIV/AIDS, but to actually survive corruption and poverty and hunger, and to take what Mike said, the resources that they have with education and knowledge, and to actually own that. That's what I would want for all of Africa.
Mike, you want to add to that?
Thank you.
Good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here. And again, Kelly, we just can't thank you enough. I am the director of the Africa Project, and we're working in Kandla, so not very far away. And we work in a lot, we focus mostly on children who've been orphaned, so we're children living in child-headed families. That's sort of our emphasis. So many great things that we need to do, right? They also do HCT and VC, all that. They do that stuff too, but that's our particular focus for the programs we're funding. This year for me, I just got back, and it's the first year that I went into the homes and was going into those trenches differently. Usually I'm working at high schools. And so I actually had a very emotional journey this time, and I can tell you have as well. So I do want to thank you for being a witness, because I think you as a person who's out in the public has such an opportunity to be a witness on an even greater level. I think all of us here have an opportunity to be a witness to what's happening, even if it hurts, and it hurts an awful lot, right? Yeah. But my question, and I guess my concern when I think about the work that we're all trying to do, and the thing that keeps coming up, and I think it's because I'm a University of California, Irvine student who's been mentored by researchers, is a lot of the things that we do obviously have really good effects, but they also have negative implications. And I'd like to know your thoughts about how our outside aid goes in, and how you guys are working to make sure that, even our best of intentions have negative consequences. So how do you guys go about making sure that you're doing a good job in terms of minimizing those negative consequences from foreign aid, which is what I think kind of leads into what you were just talking about, right? The independence, but we're kind of creating dependence through our work as well. So it's a struggle that I think all of us deal with who are working in this area. So how do you focus on this? And also, Dr. Mike, how do you look at that as well?
Go for it, Mike. I've been talking way too much.
Well, I completely agree with you that wanting to do good, thinking you're doing good, and doing good are three distinct things. So we can never deceive ourselves necessarily that we're doing good, and we'd ignore our history to realize that, especially in the 20th century, so much evil has been done by people who think they're doing good. So I think that's self-criticism. You have, I think Kelly and the team have such a spectacular group of lecturers coming up. You have the Dalai Lama here. No one has when you hear the Dalai Lama chuckle, you realize that, for me, that chuckle is about the ironies of life. That laugh, that giggle is just infectious, but I don't think it's a nervous giggle. It's just the ironies of life. We think we're doing good, we don't always. So it's something that we have to examine on a regular basis. And I think we have to, as Charlize mentioned, listen to communities, reevaluate what we're doing. We have the advantages with supporters like Charlize, who are passionate about what they do, of not having to jump the political hurdles that I think some of the organizations that you referred to, so we can focus on first purposes in a way that we're not necessarily constrained on a political agenda. So, for instance, to give you an example, when PEPFAR was, and I think PEPFAR, which is the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, was doing work, and it's a great example of bipartisan support and commitment that happened here, but they put in something that, you had to focus so much of your effort about abstinence only. We know we have lots of kids in school that are sexually active. The funds from CTAOP and Oprah could let us talk in honest and realistic ways about what's happening with sex. So I take your points. I think we all have to reflect. I can assure you that when we come back at night and go to bed, you always ask the question about, is what you're doing the right thing to do? Are you listening to people enough about what you're doing? And at the end of the day, you don't really know. But I do know this, and if you're not out there trying, nothing's going to get done. So your chances of getting something right done are better. You can't be paralyzed by doubt in terms of going out. And you have to use the best information that's available. We work in an area with a great deal of uncertainty. There's political uncertainty. There's uncertainty about the strategies about HIV prevention. It's a complex social disease. We know that there's no single answer. If there were, it's like the sign that used to be on the Big Dig in Boston. If Rome were built in a day, we'd have finished this project already. This is a long-term project that adjusts and adapts to the changing conditions that exist. And it's donors like CTAOP and the groups that have supported them.
It is interesting because I think people also want to kind of hear instant kind of change, right? We were like, well, give us the, like, what has changed? What has changed? What has changed? It is long term. You have to kind of go into it knowing that it's a long-term investment when you do prevention. It's something that we're not going to know. It's so uncertain. We're not going to know how successful this has really been until we deal with the next generation and we see where this generation has gone. And so that's you kind of have to kind of be in it for the long run. And we won't really truly know what has really truly worked or where we are because...
But we do know that 85% of kids agreed to test for HIV in the schools.
Which wasn't there before.
And we had no idea what would do. And by the time they graduate, 7% of girls in high school are infected with HIV. So we know we've gotten those 7% who need treatment on treatment. We know that we're monitoring pregnancy rates. We can determine what's happening there. So you can see an impact. But do we think we have all the answers? If we came up here and told you that we have the silver bullet and the magic answers, I'd be naive.
Yeah, but then you see that one little boy who says, I am never going to get AIDS because I wash my condom. And you realize the things that we take for granted, the knowledge that we take for granted, the things that we just kind of assume everybody knows. And that little boy, he thought he had it in the bag. He was like, I'm going to beat this thing. And he just didn't know. And you know that when you tell that boy who wants it so badly, who wants to take control of his life, you can't wash a condom, but here's access to condoms, you've changed that life. I mean, there's great power in that.
I mean, just to follow up on what Charlize said, where do rural kids go? You can teach about safe sex. Where do you go to get a condom? Before we came to the schools, there was no access to condoms. We have permission from the communities, permission from the schools to distribute condoms in schools.
When we now go to schools, sometimes we'll bring speakers and we will ask them to show us their condoms, and the boys will take their condoms out of their pocket and lift them up in the air. And that was something that would have never happened 3 years ago in this community.
Yeah. Well, we've run out of time, so thank you very much. You've been a great audience.
Sorry,
thank you,
we talked
Charlize.
too much.
Mike, thank you very much.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Oh, wow, Jerry.